For this year's general election, registered voters need to watch for their ballots arriving by mail in mid-October.
Following the instructions, seal your ballot in the envelope provided and be sure to sign the back.
Envelopes without your signature will not be accepted.
Look for your free elections guide in the newspaper or at these locations statewide.
There are no polling places.
So be sure to mail your ballot by October 27th.
Hawaii votes by mail.
Well, happy Aloha Friday. It is October 16th. I'm Ryan Kalesuji, joined by Yanji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii, a conversation brought to you by our friends over at the Office of Election, who reminds you again, October 27th, the last day that you should mail in your ballots for the upcoming general election. We'll have more information about other ways that you can vote next week on a show. But today, again, Yanji, we are focusing on, of course, COVID-19 and an exciting new potential product that could be coming to the market that is being developed right here in Hawaii.
Yeah, this is so exciting. We've wanted to have this guest on for some time. We're going to be talking to the CEO and founder of Oceanit, which is a company right here in Hawaii that is developing something they're calling Assure 19. It is a rapid test. We've talked so much about the importance of testing, but the PCR test that right now is the standard can take several days to turn around. This is a rapid test that would have results in just minutes and at a much lower price point. So please type your questions for Dr. Sullivan in the comments. We welcome him this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the basics. What is Assure 19?
Well, thanks for having me. And Assure 19 is a test that we developed here in Hawaii. But what's interesting is that it's a technology we invented from scratch. It goes back about 6 years. And so it started with work in artificial intelligence, creating a more human style AI. And then the last 3 years, we did some work with DARPA to apply that to this question of causality in biology, looking at things like cancer and HIV. And then with that work at DARPA, we developed a tool set, which we refer to as the grammar of RNA. And what that means is, you know how you have an American alphabet, 26 letters, letters make words, words make sentences. We thought, what if we look at the code, the 3 billion base pairs, for example, of human genome, and read it like a language. And with that, we can then design molecules for purpose. And Assure 19 is one of those things where we design a molecule, then we did some collaborating with UH to actually produce it and then test it. And we did all this in a matter of months, which was, in my view, nothing short of a minor miracle. But it's a molecule that then can be synthesized here. So it's not an antibody. Pretty much everything on the market that's a rapid antigen test is an antibody-based test. This is a molecule that has pretty much an indefinite shelf life. It's relatively inexpensive. You can produce the molecule for testing for really cheap. Then comes the question of producing a product, which is what we've been racing on and collaborating with Queens. So we've been doing some, and they've been super helpful. So we've been collecting data and looking at how the PCR test matches against our test. And it turns out it matches really, really well. But in ours, you get a result in about 10 minutes. Whereas on the PCR test, if you got your own PCR machine, you might be there for 2 to 6 hours. But if you go like everybody else, you're out for days. And so this gives you a very fast turnaround, relatively highly sensitive and specific to the COVID virus. And you get an answer right there. And it looks like a pregnancy little test, so no machines needed. It's based on saliva. Turns out spitting was one of the things we had to spend some time on, understanding that not everybody can spit on command. Some people don't brush their teeth. You get all kinds of funky stuff. That's why a lot of people have been abandoning saliva. But we thought, if you're going to do this every day to really reduce the risk of infectiousness in a community, for example, if Hawaii wanted to create a bubble, then just sticking the thing in your nose every day gets kind of hard, your nose gets raw. We figured if you can just spit, it's simple. You can do it in the morning first thing, you're good to go. And if you're negative, the chances of, let's say you were exposed several days ago, if you show negative, chances of exposing anybody with any significant virus is very low. So to make somebody sick, you have to have enough viral content that you expose them to. So, enough content, viral particles, and enough time to make someone sick. But if you're right around where we catch it, you're not going to make anybody sick, and you're going to test again the next day. So if turns out that you did get it, by the time it shows up, you're going to say, okay, I'm offline, timeout, I'm in a quarantine because I'm infectious, I'm infected, and I'm going to take proper measures so I don't affect family, friends, and coworkers. So this gives you the tool to create a bubble in a community. And if you make small bubbles grow into bigger bubbles, you could make Hawaii as one big bubble. And then you could bring in visitors. As long as they follow a right protocol, they're good to go. They don't need to quarantine.
I want to bring up a graphic that was sent over, and if you can kind of explain the differences between what you folks are working on as well as the PCR test, and if also you can throw in there the rapid testing that we're also hearing about. What are some of the differences? But if we can first go over sort of this slide here that kind of outlines a little what you were talking about.
Yeah, so this is an important slide to understand what goes on when you get exposed to a virus like COVID-19, and the time it takes to go from when you were exposed to when you're really sick, or whether you're asymptomatic. So you got it, but you're not really, you're just feeling a little funky. Maybe you think it's jet lag or something. So what you've got is the green zone there. It's called pre-infectious. That means, it's a period of time where you've got it. It might show up with a very, very sensitive test, but you're really not infecting everybody. The kind of the pinkish zone there, that's the range where you are transmitting and are infectious. So if you want to manage infectiousness in a community, that is the zone you want to manage. And then the green zone on the right, post-infectious, you might actually have some RNA floating around that would show up in a PCR test, but you're not going to infect anybody. So instead of, like, some people may have some stray RNA floating around for a couple months, but they're not going to infect anybody. So you would call that in a PCR test a type of a false positive. Whereas what this does is this picks up when you are producing viral material. And the viral material, when it's at a certain quantity, is where you infect other people around you. So this is really how you manage infectiousness. Now, a PCR is the standard you hear a lot about. It takes days to get an answer. It's because it takes hours to actually run a test under the best conditions. What it does is it looks for strains of RNA and it amplifies them. The amplification means you can have hardly any, and it'll search and search and search. It'll keep amplifying and amplifying until it finds it. It'll say, well, that's what infected you, or that's what you got. And that's important for proper therapy, proper treatment. But if you're managing infectiousness in a community, I would argue it's the wrong tool, because what you need is something that's fast. It gives you a result really in minutes, and it's affordable. So you can use it across an entire community and essentially eliminate infectiousness in a community. So that's what Assure 19 focuses on. A PCR test is still valid. I mean, we've got a PCR in our lab. We've used it for years on all kinds of interesting things, but it's a little bit overkill. A way to kind of think about it is, what you really want to manage infectiousness is to look at, we've done a bunch of work in space on situational awareness. And so if you got one big telescope and you all share time in the telescope, you can only look up once in a little, blue moon. You got to get on the schedule. You might be months, you get 10 minutes or 10 hours, whatever it is. In our case, what we did on the SSA thing is we put small optics around the planet, tracking space 24/7 for like 1/10,000th of the cost. So we learned a lot in some of the space work, and we think that's how you would manage a contagion in a community. So you need contagion situational awareness, and then you can stamp out infectiousness.
Let's talk about some of the questions here. Marie Streep wants to know accuracy. How accurate is this test? And also let's talk about availability and price point. When could we actually see this come to market, and how much would it cost?
So accuracy is an important question. The two things you basically need to report to FDA to get FDA approval is sensitivity and specificity. So when you talk about accuracy, you want to know, what's the risk of missing it? A PCR test is more sensitive. So if you're using the broad term of accuracy, you would say it's more accurate. However, our test is more functional to find the virus, and our data from Queens is very good. So we're shooting for like 95% in terms of sensitivity and specificity. The results look like we're in the zone, but that would go into the application for FDA. And so they have a mathematical way to track it. So what we do is we take a spit test and then a PCR test, and you match them and you count what are called true positives, true negatives, that kind of thing, as you compare those two. And it lines up really, really well. So I would say it's got very good accuracy and very good specificity. But then comes the question of, as you point out, availability. So we started months ago talking to folks in the state about the idea of manufacturing in Hawaii. Because we said we can set up manufacturing. Since we invented the technology, we can synthesize the molecules here, and we're going to need like 50 people. We figured we could produce 25,000 tests a day, but we needed time to set it up. So a lot of people are thinking about it. We're hopefully weeks away from the FDA approval. And then what we'll do, we'll race into how to get, because we're making them in the lab right now. But to really get to that kind of quantity, we have to set up not a huge facility, but a facility where we literally will make these things. And with the FDA approval, you got to have quality systems and supply chain management. And there's all kinds of jobs around making sure the stuff you get in the supply chain, paper and plastic, which is what most of the test is. The molecule's pretty minor when it comes right down to it. And so you got to make sure you get the good stuff in the supply chain and you manage it, then you assemble them and you test them. So what that means is if we get approval, say at the end of the month, it'll take us months to kind of get up and running. What we're trying to do is find some, wouldn't call them shortcuts, but ways to go faster in spurts so that we can start producing for some of the local businesses and the folks that could really use a test. And so in pricing, we think the going out, we've been talking about $20 a test. I think if we can go to scale, you can get this thing to, below $4 to $5, somewhere in that range, because it's mostly paper and plastic. And there's, I think, ways in maybe the next generation that you could eliminate some parts and just make it that much less expensive.
Wow, when you're thinking about it, potentially and hopefully, this is sort of the final approval process is getting the FDA approval, which you're saying could potentially come at the end of this month, and then potentially a few more months to kind of get this off the ground and running. So maybe looking at this becoming available to the public in early next year. Is that what we're looking at, sort of timetable?
Yeah, we're
really
trying. We're trying to go faster than that, and hopefully we can get. Since we're trying to set up manufacturing here, we might have some small companies around the country we could run the line. And for example, Department of Defense said they have a line we could use. A line, the way to think of it is it's a bunch of tables in a clean room where you can set up and have chemicals and other things. And so what'll happen is if we can take the line over, like the DoD guys said there might be one in Maryland we could use, we can just start producing. So we're looking for those as workarounds. But what we really are interested in doing is actually making it here in Hawaii. And the global need for this, there was a Harvard study several months ago, but we're trying to think in terms of 1 to 5 million per day. And the numbers range up to 30 million per day in terms of national global need.
Wow, that's incredible to think about. If this were to be available, as you start to ramp up, who do you think this is best suited for? Obviously, the world would like 30 million a day, but in the initial sort of rollout, where do you think this would be most effective to be used to limit the spread of the virus?
Well, I think the travel industry is important. I think schools are going to be really important, opening schools. So schools are one of the first use cases we focused on, but clearly the travel industry is huge.
We want to bring in some questions from the audience. Mary's asking but the results can change the next day. So how would it keep us safer from tourists? And I know this sort of leads to a broader question about sort of what you guys have set up is called the Aloha Protocol, which is multiple tests, not just one for incoming tourists. If you can sort of speak to this question, but also maybe the broader question of what exactly is the proposal of this Aloha Protocol and how you see it being implemented in the state?
So both good questions. So to manage infectiousness, you need to basically understand you're sick before you're producing enough virus to make everybody around you sick. And we can do that with this kind of test. And the Aloha Protocol, the way that works is when you walk off an airplane, for example, you test. That's kind of your 0 mark. And then you test every day, 5 days thereafter. You spit in the morning. You look at this thing. It looks like a pregnancy kit for 5 days. You hit peak viral production 5 days after exposure. Could be 4 days, could be 6, but I say 5. That way you're going to catch it before you produce enough virus to make everybody sick. So you just do it once a day. We think, for example, in terms of sensitivity, our sensitivity will sort of, let's say PCR is a little more sensitive, but it takes days. We're going to be measuring the same thing within about 6 hours of somebody that's infected, because the way you produce a virus goes up very steeply. And so it's a matter of hours before you produce enough virus. So we figured if you do this once a day in the morning, and if you're negative, you should be able to be around people. I would still suggest you wear a mask, that kind of thing, for the, when you're around people for the next so many days. But your chances of infecting anybody is very low. After 5 days, you're clear because you don't have any virus. And, depending on the bubbles you're working in. So if you're going into an environment where those are clean, virus free, you definitely should wear your mask, every day after you test. But after the 5th day, you're good to go. So, for example, a tourist could come, walk off the airplane, test if they're negative, to go about their business, still wearing mask, social distance, do all those things. But they can go to the beach, they can, go and have dinner, they can do all kinds of things. Their chances of infecting anybody around them is very small if they're asymptomatic. But you have to do it every day, then you document it with your mobile phone. You just click the picture of the test to show that you're negative. And that's it. So the idea is to make it really simple, easy to document, easy to track. If you are positive, you got to do a timeout. We recommend you get a PCR test just to double check and, look at what's the effective treatment or therapy based on your current physical health condition.
Let's bring in Sean Ng's question here. He says, impressive work. Could this solution be used in pre-testing travel program and be deployed broadly to points of origin on the mainland? So the idea that instead of travelers taking it once they get here, they could get some kind of clearance beforehand. How do you actually see something like this practically being rolled out for a community like ours?
Well, that's another good question. So we've suggested that everybody in the TSA line before they board test. And what you do then is you kind of create a bubble on the airplane. So nobody on the airplane is producing enough virus to make others sick. They might have some. So still, you got to kind of take it easy, try to manage what's around you, all of those kind of things. But you're literally creating a mini bubble for a period of, let's say if you're coming from the West Coast, 4 hours, 5 hours. And so these are bubbles and bubbles. So the idea is to create safe bubbles where the risk of viral exposure is very, very low. You can't do that with a 72-hour test because you honestly don't know. But with this, you could literally do it while they're in line. So they go through the security, the metal detector, and then they go to another sort of a line and they basically spit in a little cup. And then by the time they get to the other end, they're good to go. So that way you screen everybody walking on the airplane and the airplane becomes a bubble. So when I say bubbles and bubbles, the idea is to live with the virus. Yeah, I know it's kind of funny to say it, but when you live with the virus, you're managing infectiousness. And if you create these little mini bubbles, so the idea is the little bubbles become bigger bubbles, and that's how you create the state of Hawaii as a bubble. We start with schools, right? Kids going into the classroom, everybody, of course, walking off the airplane. You can do restaurants, businesses, and other things. So that what you've got is everybody in that bubbles, they're not at risk of infecting everybody around them, but you're still being careful with washing your hands, social distancing, that kind of stuff.
When you think about this as a whole, it seems very significant, the fact, one, that it is a local company here in Hawaii that is helping to develop this technology that could impact really those throughout the country and throughout the world. For you folks as a company of where you are now, what is sort of the mentality going into that, knowing that this could be, as many leaders in our community are calling it, a game changer? And what are some of the steps that you folks are taking to maybe help to set you guys up for success as you sort of move through this process?
Well, some really good questions. So we kind of look at it at Oceanit about how are we going to help the community and make a difference in the world. And the people working on this are working sort of day and night, a lot of energy, a lot of time. We're encouraging people to try things, test the heck out of it. And that's what we've been doing. So the idea, the opportunity, so this goes back to this question of creating a more diverse economy with the power of our ideas in Hawaii, from Hawaii to the world. So instead of importing everything and sending our young people away, maybe have young people stay here with the idea that the world is the market. We just live in Hawaii because that's a choice. And so it's kind of a mind shift in the way we think of things. And that is how we think at Oceanit. So Oceanit's been around for decades. We work all over the world already in all kinds of industries. We literally invent technology from fundamental science, and then we bring it to market. We call it mind to market, is the kind of business we are. And so we encourage people to think about what we're doing here with our time on the planet to make a difference to the world. And this fits in exactly with that.
I was interested what you said about the PCR test, and we had 8,000. Actually, if you look at the paper today, it said as many as 10,000 arrivals yesterday. We have opened the floodgates, if you will. We're not nearly the 30,000 plus daily arrivals that we had pre-COVID, but 5 to 10,000. I think the head of HTA told us 5,000 was what they were expecting for a daily average. Is the PCR test, as we have it now, enough? When you see all those people coming in, knowing what you know about the testing and sort of the snapshot that you said that the PCR test gives us, does that give you any comfort, or are you concerned about all those people coming in with the kind of testing that we have right now?
Well, first, I'm trying not to second guess our elected officials and their best intentions to keep the economy going and keep jobs and everything. But in my opinion, we're going to have another lockdown. There's no way around it, because just the randomness, and I know Josh Green, I have an enormous respect for Josh. The numbers, as you bring in more people, the probability that somebody is asymptomatic or doesn't follow whatever they said they did, when they did, that kind of thing, the numbers go up. And so the probability of finding or having an incident, increasing the numbers, I don't think it's a question of if, it's just a question of when. I don't think there's any other way around it, because 72 hours before you travel, again, is a good gesture, but in terms of reducing risk, it's minor. And when it comes to all these people, it's a question of numbers. And so unless you can test everybody walking off the airplane and implement this kind of program, it's very hard to contain the infectiousness in the community. So it's a tough problem, because we would like to keep the businesses that support the visitor industry alive. And Hawaii is a special place and an important visitor destination for a lot of people that look at Hawaii as a place to go and unwind and relax and enjoy, the whole idea of the culture and the environment and that kind of thing. But there's no way. The discussion in the neighbor islands about a second test, that's the right idea. You have to do more than what you're doing. That's going to reduce risk, but ain't going to get rid of it. You're still going to have. So the only way you're really going to crush it is you need to have a test like Oceanit, for example. There's other antigen tests out there, but because we're a molecule, we're not an antibody. So our test is a little more robust. We think we have better sensitivity. So this question about, are we more accurate? Yeah, we think we are than most everybody else that's out there. But even a crummy test, if you do it regularly, will give you an idea if you're at risk of infecting people. So the neighbor islands are looking at trying to get any kind of test to test people to reduce risk. That's a good idea. So I support what the mayors are asking for, because that is going to reduce risk. But if you're only going to do the PCR test, there's very limited capacity, and it's quite expensive. So you need to have something that's inexpensive, affordable, and available. And so what I've suggested people think about is, because we can synthesize the molecules here, we call this field forward edge manufactured medicine, which you can do in Hawaii to support the community. So we can actually generate everything we need in Hawaii for Hawaii. But it's a question of will. Are we interested in doing this? Do we feel confident to take a chance? All those things. And so it's not just a technical question. There's no question the technology works, and it's going to keep moving. And the team has done a fantastic job. It's really a question of political will, and what do we want for our future? And I think that's probably at the core really what's going on. We kind of want someone to save us. That's just the way someone's going to fly in and they're going to fix it all. There's little confidence that you can have a community to actually solve a problem from the ground up. And I've been talking about this for a while. I became a fan of this economist called Paul Romer, who got the 2018 Nobel Prize in endogenous growth theory. The basic idea is that if you want an economy where you have a creative economy, you're building from the ground up, and education and imagination become the key things. And in my opinion, Hawaii can excel in that space. And so I've been a fan of, instead of what we do now, which people call this neoclassical theory of economic growth, which is kind of flat, limited resources and other things, the endogenous concept, although you're betting on people, and I think that's where we're uncomfortable as a community. In my opinion, there's no shortage of talent in Hawaii. And the drive and the things that people bring to this is extraordinary. And I get to work with these people all the time.
I want to bring in another question before we end. I know we're running out of time, but Al is asking, why isn't CARES money being used to help fund this idea? I think it speaks to a larger question. If you are working with state officials on this, because you would think that with something that has this potential, I mean, this could be something that residents take every day that we could use to get into sporting events or going into school, as you said, and other things. Is that something that you are working with the counties or the state with? And if so, how are they sort of in partnership with you folks at this point in time?
Well, it's a really good question. And I would say we have been in discussion with them for quite some time. And what we have is an abundance of caution. And by that, I mean, people want to think about it. We're going to just keep moving. But the state is trying to get comfortable with this whole idea. And think about, we're talking about a lot of things, right? So there's a science question. Of course, we're working through all the FDA issues. We're down selected by National Institutes of Health as one of a couple thousand applicants as part of a RADx team, which is part of the Shark Tank thing. We're the only people in the country doing this thing we're doing. So we're doing good science, and it has a lot of potential. But I think the bigger issue is becoming comfortable with ourselves as a community. So what I'm kind of getting is the fine people we've elected are trying to think about it. Another way to say that is there's 100 ways to say no, and there's only one way to say yes. But I'm not faulting them for that, because I know they're trying to do the best they can. But from my perspective, it's kind of an attitude shift. It's the glass half empty, half full. And I think we need to take an attitude that we're going to save ourselves as a community by taking the talent, the university, the medical infrastructure. We're going to build a future. I was just looking at this report around growth in biotech around the world, especially around the US. It's creating lots of jobs. Are we interested in really creating a diverse economy, or do we just want to talk about it? That's a basic question, I think, that's on display here. And I think it's something we should all be thinking about. How much is this sincere interest in building a diverse economy versus let's just talk about it and then maybe something will happen? And I think that's, maybe a point for a longer conversation later.
Well, before we go, we do have a lawmaker writing in, and I do want to get to Representative Gene Ward's question. He says, I've heard from many decision makers that you will get a pre-order for the saliva test if you pass FDA trials. How close to a decision and how close to passing the FDA hurdle? That's what everyone wants to know. When is this going to happen? So can you, I know you broke it down at the beginning, but for those who missed the top, how soon could we actually see this?
Well, our plan is to get in 2 weeks, get the application in, and FDA is saying they'll move it very quickly. One of the long poles in the tent right now is this thing called cross-reactivity. So we have to do the test in the presence of flu, do the test in the presence of a few other ailments to show that what we're getting is in fact COVID and not the flu and not cholera or some other kind of thing. So the problem with that is that infrastructure, the medical infrastructure, doesn't exist here for those things. And we've had to find capacity on the mainland because this is, you could call this a nascent industry, but the infrastructure here is very thin. So I think we finally got a facility that'll run the battery of tests, and hopefully we can start that next week. So if we get that done, and the results are, we've done all these tests in our lab, by the way, because we've got dead virus and stuff we can try and experiment with, but we need it tested by one of these labs. When we do that, with the data we've collected, and we're collecting a little more, then we should be able to turn in the application.
All right. Well, exciting things. I mean, we could continue to talk for another hour or so, but our time here is up. Dr. Patrick Sullivan from Oceanit, thank you so much for giving us an update, and we'd love to have you back on, hopefully with more good news in the months to come as this sort of continues to unveil and sort of roll out as we see Assure-19 hopefully getting the green light here in a few months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha. Wow, Ryan, that is so, we talk so much on this program with so much negative news when it comes to the coronavirus. We hear about businesses that are struggling and all of these things that are happening in our community that aren't great. But it's wonderful today to have a really deep dive into Assure-19 and to hear about the technology that they're developing happening right here in Hawaii. He talked a lot about, the pivot to diversifying the economy and how important biotech could be. Something like this for a price point between $5 and $20, the idea that you could get a rapid result in 10 minutes, I mean, that could just be so vital for so many industries, schools, sporting events, as you talked about, travel. I mean, the list is really, could go on and on.
Yeah, and you heard from him saying how they're having to manage not only the science side of having to make sure that this is, of course, accurate and that they're following all the protocols to make sure that they can get the FDA approval, but also at the same time thinking about how they're going to manufacture this, knowing that there will be a demand for this and looking for facilities and for people to help to just manufacture this product should everything continue to move forward. And so there is a lot of things that they are simultaneously having to work on, but as he said, they are working day and night. And again, it speaks to the broader question of how we continue to keep the mentality of someone coming into Hawaii to save us, but this is an opportunity for the state to really get something out there and provide support to not only the country, but to the world through this testing. So exciting things, and we continue to wish them the best of luck, because I think this could be, as again, many are calling it a game changer in this market.
Yeah, we encourage you also to check out their website. They've got a lot of great information if you want to dive deeper into the technical details of the science itself and read some of the write-throughs. They've got some great YouTube videos on how the testing actually works. It was wonderful to hear from Dr. Sullivan, and so we encourage you to check them out and see the possibilities there. But the idea that they could, hit a FDA review in 2 weeks is really wonderful to hear.
That's right. And we will continue to, of course, have these discussions and something we could pose to our next guest, which will be Governor Ige on Monday, to talk to him about the state's reopening. We know that yesterday, Hawaii making national news with this sort of implementation of this testing model that they are now using. There were some long lines at airports. Many visitors, however, saying that it was well worth it. Yanji said close to 7,000 to 8,000 people arrived on Hawaii shores yesterday. So we want to talk to the governor about that. His continuing discussions with the mayors and the counties to sort of shore up some of those second testing questions that, of course, have come up, as well as we'll dive into unemployment as well next week.
That's right. On Wednesday, we're going to have Ann Pereira Estaquio. She, of course, is the head of the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. They've set up a new call center. That call center, from what we've read, really getting inundated with calls, people still frustrated and hoping to get those benefits. So we're going to be talking to her. And then on Friday, we're going to be talking to Jim Ireland and one of the paramedics over at EMS. You know, those guys are the true frontline workers of this pandemic. How has EMS been doing? You know, an agency that already is so stretched so thin in typical times. And of course, these are not typical times. And also on Friday, we're going to invite Scott Nago on. He, of course, is the head of the Office of Elections. He'll be telling us how many ballots they've already received. And for those of you who may have missed the registration deadline, there are opportunities for you to register to vote same day and to vote in person. Of course, you know, the precincts aren't going to be open in the way that they have been in years past. This is an all mail-in election, but there are still ways to get a vote there if you have not been able to register so far.
That's right. So we're looking forward to all those conversations. And again, we thank you for continuing to tune in and for your comments, and let us know as we move into November. We are looking to, of course, bring more guests on. So let us know who you'd like to hear from as we move into November. It's hard to believe that we are heading into the home stretch of 2020. It certainly will be a year that we will not forget, but we encourage all of you to continue to stay connected with us. And of course, thank our sponsors at the Office of Election for making this conversation possible. Have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday with Governor Ige at 10:30. Aloha.
Aloha.
For this year's general election, registered voters need to watch for their ballots arriving by mail in mid-October.
Following the instructions, seal your ballot in the envelope provided and be sure to sign the back.
Envelopes without your signature will not be accepted.
Look for your free elections guide in the newspaper or at these locations statewide.
There are no polling places.
So be sure to mail your ballot by October 27th. Hawaii votes by mail.